The Hunger Games are a tool of control, but as brutal as they are, nobody seems to question them. Everyone is captivated, and that's no coincidence. Capital knew exactly how to pull it off using cold, calculated tactics. What's even more unsettling is that many of these strategies aren't far from those we see in the real world. That's why in this analysis we'll break them down one by one so that you aren't fooled by these tricks in the future. In a dystopian future marked by the aftermath of a failed rebellion, the nation of Panem is divided into districts controlled by the capital. As punishment for this past uprising, every year the capital holds the Hunger Games, a twisted event in which one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 are randomly selected from each district to fight to the death in a televised arena. Only one can survive. This is how the capital reminds everyone who holds the power, and some even defend it as a tradition that unites us all, according to Game Master Seneca Crane in an interview. While the capital gets ready for another year of spectacle, life in the impoverished District 12 is much harsher. There, Katniss consoles her younger sister, Prim, who's had a nightmare in which her name is drawn in the reaping, the lottery that selects the tributes. Katniss, who's been shouldering responsibilities ever since her father's death and her mother's deep depression, tries to calm her by telling her that her name has only been entered once. But the fear lingers. Katniss steps beyond the district's boundaries and into the forest, an area deemed forbidden but essential for her survival. With her bow and arrows, she hunts to feed her family. Waiting for her there is Gale, her best friend and hunting partner. Their bond is built on trust, complicity, and perhaps something more neither of them dares to acknowledge. As they talk about the cruelty of the games and the hypocrisy of a capital that mourns the fallen while celebrating their deaths as entertainment, Gale questions what would happen if everyone simply stopped watching. People refuse to take part in this twisted spectacle. Would it still hold the same power? But Katniss believes that will never happen. She dreams of escaping, of finding another way to live free, but she can't leave Prim behind. Gale, who has his name entered 42 times in the lottery, points out the harsh reality. The capital allows people to put their names in more than once in exchange for food or fuel, making it even harder for the poor to escape this cycle. Later that day, the reaping takes place. People of District 12 gather in the town square. Before the event begins, Katniss gives Prim a pin shaped like a mockingjay, promising her that she will be safe. The square falls silent. Effie Trinket, the capital's representative, appears, her enthusiasm as artificial as ever. A propaganda video plays, with President Snow presenting the games as an honorable tradition, though in truth they are nothing more than a punishment disguised as national pride. The draw begins, and Effie pulls a slip of paper from the bowl. The name she calls shatters everything, Prim's. The young girl steps forward, trembling. But before she can reach the stage, Katniss shouts and volunteers in her place. No one in District 12 had ever done this before. The silence is replaced by a deep respect. People raise 3 fingers in the air, an ancient gesture of respect and farewell. The male tribute is then chosen. Peeta, a young baker who, though Katniss barely knows him, unknowingly changed her life years earlier when he threw her a loaf of bread to save her from starving, even knowing he would be punished for it. Capital imposed the Hunger Games as a constant reminder of its power over the districts. But for this system to work, it's not enough to enforce it with force. Psychological manipulation is key, keeping the masses oppressed while simultaneously desensitizing them to the brutality of the games so that no one questions or dares to oppose it. Let's break down some of the strategies the capital uses to maintain control. From the very beginning, the method of choosing tributes is designed to target the most vulnerable. The system allows people to put their names in multiple times in exchange for food or other necessities. Of course, this disproportionately affects the poor. And why would the capital do this? Because poverty breeds desperation. A person who is focused on surviving the day is far less likely to rebel. This way, the capital ensures that those who enter the arena aren't thinking about justice or revolution. They're only focused on survival. We can see this in Katniss's initial reaction to Gale's ideas about rebellion. She doesn't dismiss them because she doesn't care about the system, but because she's too busy trying to protect her family. And that's exactly the logic the Capitol wants to instill. Later, we see Katniss and Peeta being taken to the Justice Building where they say their goodbyes. Katniss hugs Prim, promising her she'll survive and reminding her of what's most important, to stay safe. Prim gives her the Mockingjay pin as a symbol of protection. Katniss then speaks with her mother, urging her to stay strong for Prim, and finally, Gale gives her one last embrace, reminding her that she is strong and capable, especially with a bow and arrow, even if she has to make one herself from scratch. Katniss and Peeta are then whisked away to the Capitol in a luxurious train, surrounded by endless banquets and tables piled high with pastries. Effie accompanies them, explaining that the best part of this opportunity is that, while they'll only be in the Capitol for a short time, they'll get to enjoy things like crystal chandeliers, platinum doorknobs, and lavish feasts. Here, another Capitol strategy reveals itself, dressing up cruelty as an opportunity. They market the games as a potential escape from poverty. He literally says that the best part of this experience is that even if you're only there temporarily, you get to enjoy luxuries that most can only dream of. And sure, if you win, you and your family are set for life. Sounds tempting, right? But this reward is nothing more than a control mechanism. By offering a tiny glimmer of hope, a small chance of escaping poverty, they keep people trapped in the system. People continue to participate not just because they're forced to, but because they believe that maybe, just maybe, they can win. And that tiny chance is enough to keep them hooked. Accepting the rules means staying trapped in a system built on injustice, one that delays any hope of revolution. But what if the districts united? What if they simply refused to keep playing the Capitol's twisted game? That would be a serious threat. And that's why the Capitol relies on a very old, very effective tactic: divide and conquer. A divided population, hurt, angry, and mistrustful, is much easier to control. And the Capitol has designed the Hunger Games to deepen those divisions. One of the most brutal rules of the games is that the tributes must be children, the most loved, the most innocent. That ensures that every year, each district ends up with the blood of someone else's child on their hands. But it doesn't stop there. The districts also turn on themselves. Every year, they're forced to send two of their own, one boy, one girl. When one of them wins, that child doesn't come home as a symbol of pride. Instead, they return as a painful reminder of the one who didn't. Even victory brings grief. That pain lingers, festers, and prevents the districts from uniting against their common enemy. Then we meet Effie, who introduces Katniss and Peeta to their mentor, Haymitch, a past winner who now drowns himself in alcohol and sarcasm. First, Haymitch seems completely disillusioned, like he's given up on any chance of survival. But when Katniss stabs a knife into the table right next to his hand, it becomes clear. She hasn't given up, and she's not going down without a fight. On the train to the Capitol, Haymitch offers them their first real piece of advice. You don't have to be the strongest to win the games. What you really need is support. That's where sponsors come in, wealthy viewers who can send life-saving gifts during the competition. But to earn their help, you have to make them care about you. You have to make them like you. As the train approaches the Capitol, the contrast between the two worlds becomes painfully obvious. Capitol is massive, overflowing with luxury and excess. Feels like another planet compared to the poverty of the districts. Katniss watches in silence. Peeta, on the other hand, smiles and waves. He understands the game already. One of the film's most powerful symbols is bread. In fact, the very name of the country, Panem, gives it away. Panem is Latin for bread. And considering the story, it's hard not to see the connection to the ancient Roman phrase, Panem is circenses, bread and circuses. The Roman poet Juvenal used that expression to criticize a society that gave up political power and freedom in exchange for food and entertainment. Fits perfectly. In the Hunger Games, the games themselves are the circus, violent, dramatic, and meant to distract. And the tightly controlled food supply? That's the bread. Capitol uses both to control the people. Keep them fed just enough to survive, entertained just enough to stay distracted. But the bread symbol runs deeper. It also shows up in the character of Peeta. Even his name sounds like pita, a type of bread. He's literally the boy with the bread. And in one of the darkest moments of Katniss's life, it was Peta who gave her a burnt loaf when she was starving, an act of kindness that gave her the strength to go on. From that moment on, bread becomes a symbol of compassion and hope. Katniss even says in the books, "To this day, I can never shake the connection between this boy, Peta, and the bread that gave me hope." But bread also highlights inequality. In the poorer districts, bread is rare. It can mean the difference between life and death. In contrast, the capital overflows with absurd levels of food, colorful pastries, decorative dishes, indulgent feasts. Not just excess, it's grotesque. A visual reminder of who has everything and who has nothing. When the tributes arrive at the capital, they're treated like celebrities. Katniss is scrubbed clean in a high-tech remake center, as if she's just another object to be polished and displayed. Her team of stylists is baffled by her appearance, unable to understand that the dirt they're scrubbing away is part of her reality. But then we meet Cinna, her personal stylist. He's different. He doesn't treat her like a prop. He doesn't compliment her beauty. Instead, he quietly says, "I'm sorry this happened to you." He treats her like a human being and promises to help her. And he does. Instead of dressing her in a standard coal miner outfit like past tributes from District 12, he creates something unforgettable, a dress that appears to be on fire. "I'm not trying to make you look pretty," he tells her. "I'm trying to make them remember you." During the tribute parade, Katniss and Peta ride a chariot engulfed in flames. Crowd, which had barely paid attention before, erupts. For a brief moment, District 12 shines. Peta grabs Katniss's hand. She hesitates, but allows it. She knows the gesture will win hearts. After the parade, President Snow gives his usual cold welcome to the tributes and wishes them luck. Katniss watches the others closely, especially the career tributes from Districts 1 and 2. These are kids who've trained for this moment their whole lives and volunteer to compete. Just by looking at them, Cato, Clove, you can feel the danger they pose. By now, we can see another of the capital's psychological strategies, desensitization. Through spectacle and ritual, they numb the public to the horror of the games. And here's where sponsors come back into play. Citizens of the capital are allowed to send gifts to tributes they like: medicines, food, water. On the surface, this looks like generosity, but it serves two very specific purposes. First, it makes the sponsors feel like good people. It allows them to feel charitable without having to question the system they're part of. Their help doesn't challenge the injustice. It doesn't stop the violence. It just eases their conscience. It's a lot like real-world criticism of certain forms of charity, ones that make the donor feel noble but don't address the root problems. Capital needs this kind of citizen. Someone who believes they're doing good but never asks why kids are dying in the first place. Second, the sponsor system forces tributes to sell themselves emotionally. They have to gain the audience's sympathy. They don't, they die, not just from violence but from being ignored. Some tributes have a better chance of survival, and that's no accident. The more the audience connects with their personal stories, the easier it is to distract from the brutal reality of what's actually happening. People aren't watching teenagers kill each other. They're following character arcs, rooting for favorites, and getting emotionally involved. Stops being a massacre and starts feeling like a show. This narrative approach is no coincidence. It directly reflects what French philosopher Guy Debord called the society of the spectacle. In his influential book, Debord argued that modern life had shifted away from direct experience and toward representations. In other words, it no longer matters what we live, but how that life looks from the outside. What's real gets pushed aside by what's edited, polished, and made to be consumed. That's exactly what happens to the tributes. Their fears, friendships, and emotions are all repackaged as entertainment. Their lives aren't valued for what they are, but for how their stories make people feel. It doesn't matter if they suffer or die. What matters is whether their story sells, whether it touches hearts, whether it makes people care enough to send in sponsorships. In a spectacle-driven society, emotions stop being something you feel and start becoming tools for survival. That's a disturbing shift, and it hits closer to home than we might like to admit. Today, it often feels like if you don't share it, it didn't happen. A vacation, a breakup, a protest, even your sadness, all of it is captured on camera and shared. Just like Katniss needs to show affection for Peeta so the public connects with her, many people now feel pressure to turn their lives into content. If it can't be posted, if it doesn't gain traction, it almost feels like it's not real. So Katniss protects Peeta. Maybe part of it is genuine, but she also knows people are watching. She's aware that her every move could win her allies or cost her everything. That's where it gets complicated. How much of what she does is real and how much is performance? It's a powerful metaphor for how we live today. Many of us are constantly performing, curating our lives for invisible cameras, hoping for approval, likes, validation, rewards. In this environment, even our identities become products. Feelings, authenticity, truth, they all take a back seat to how things look on screen. This idea, that image matters more than reality, is key to understanding how the Capitol keeps control. They wrap violence in glamour. The Hunger Games aren't presented as a horrifying punishment, they're a dazzling competition. Tributes become celebrities. They're given stylists, dramatic outfits, and emotional backstories, all carefully designed to keep the audience entertained and emotionally invested. It's violence, but beautiful. Cruelty with a soundtrack. Death in high definition. This technique isn't just fiction. In the real world, we see it all the time. Consider certain reality shows that package cruelty and psychological manipulation as entertainment. A striking example is America's Next Top Model. On the surface, it was about fashion and ambition. But behind the lights and cameras, contestants, many of them very young, were subjected to constant pressure, harsh criticism about their appearance, and even demeaning challenges like posing in coffins or simulating homelessness. Everything was shot with high-end visuals, dramatic music, and stylish flair. But beneath the aesthetic, real emotional damage, real trauma. Capitol does the same. It knows that if horror is dressed up in beauty, most people won't question it. They won't protest. They'll just keep watching, too dazzled to realize what's really going on. And that's the danger. When we prioritize visuals over ethics, style over substance, we lose our ability to think critically. We stop recognizing pain, injustice, cruelty because we're too caught up in how it looks. Worse still, if we're not paying attention, we might become part of the audience that claps while the horror plays on. Back in the training center, the tributes are preparing to survive. They're learning combat, shelter building, and basic survival skills. Everyone wants weapons. But the trainer reminds them, most won't die from an opponent, they'll die from infection, thirst, or cold. Rue, the smallest tribute from District 11, is quiet and alert, always observing. During dinner, Peeta praises Katniss's archery skills. She mentions his strength. But when Peeta admits that even his own mother thinks Katniss will win, he breaks down. He walks away, defeated. Katniss remembers the day he once threw her a piece of bread, how that small act of kindness helped her feed her family. She's never forgotten it. Later, the tributes undergo individual evaluations. Haymitch urges Katniss to stand out. It's her best shot at getting sponsors. When it's her turn, the judges barely look at her. She misses her first shot and they completely lose interest. Frustrated and humiliated, she draws another arrow and fires it straight into the apple in a roasted pig's mouth, just inches from the head of Seneca Crane, the head game maker. Silence. She bows and says, "Thank you for your consideration," then walks out. Back in the lounge, everyone is tense. Fee is horrified. But Haymitch and Cinna laugh. "That was brilliant," Haymitch says. That night, the scores are announced. Peeta gets an 8. But Katniss? She scores an 11, the highest of all. Everyone is shocked. Meanwhile, in the Capitol, President Snow watches closely. Seneca is impressed by Katniss's boldness. But Snow warns him, a little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. A spark can ignite a fire. Make sure it's contained. She discovers that Peeta has been training on his own, and it feels like a betrayal. Just one night before the games begin, all the tributes are brought in for their live interviews with Caesar Flickerman. One by one, they appear on stage. Rue wins the audience over with her sweetness. Cato impresses everyone with his strength and confidence. Then it's Katniss's turn. Before going on stage, Cinna encourages her to simply be herself, and she listens. Her dress is designed to resemble flames, glowing and sparking as she walks. But it's not just the dress that captures everyone's attention. When she talks about Prim, her voice trembles with raw honesty. "I promised her I'd try to win," she says, her eyes filled with emotion. Crowd is moved. Then Peeta steps onto the stage. Calm, sincere, and composed, he shares something unexpected. He's been in love with a girl for as long as he can remember. But she never noticed him, not until the reaping. The audience laughs, and Caesar teases that maybe if Peeta wins, he'll finally win her heart. But Peeta's reply silences the room. "She came here with me." Crowd erupts in applause. It's a perfect moment for them. But backstage, Katniss is furious. As soon as Peeta walks off stage, she confronts him. "What was that?" she demands. Haymitch steps in, separating them. He tells her it was a strategic move meant to help them both. But Katniss doesn't see it that way. She feels used, exposed. Still, one thing is clear to everyone. In the Hunger Games, image is everything. The public believes Katniss and Peeta are in love. It might just be their best chance at survival. That night, Katniss can't sleep. She leaves her room and finds Peeta staring out the window. They talk quietly, one last time before the games begin. Peeta admits his greatest fear isn't death, it's losing himself. He doesn't want to become what the Capitol expects. Katniss hears him, but she can't afford to think that way. "I have to survive for Prim." Now, let's look deeper into what's going on inside Katniss. What drives her? From what we learn in the books, Katniss experienced a major trauma at just 11 years old. She lost her father in a mining accident, suddenly and tragically. But it wasn't just him. Her mother, emotionally devastated, shut down completely. Though physically present, she stopped functioning, leaving Katniss and her younger sister, Prim, completely on their own. They nearly starved. That period shaped everything about Katniss. She holds deep resentment toward her mother, especially evident in the emotional goodbye scene before the games. Since then, Katniss has carried the weight of responsibility. Just 11, she became the sole provider for her family. She hunts illegally, trades in secret, and does whatever it takes to keep them alive. It's likely she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, frequent nightmares, emotional withdrawal, and a constant sense of alertness. She doesn't trust easily. She's defensive. She keeps people at arm's length. So when Peeta claims to love her during the interview, her first reaction is suspicion. Her instinct is always self-protection. Like many children forced to grow up too fast, Katniss developed a fierce protective nature, especially toward Prim. We see that in how she mothered her little sister, shielding her from the harshness of their reality. Katniss never let Prim add her name to the reaping multiple times in exchange for food, even though it was common and often necessary. And when Prim's name was drawn, Katniss didn't hesitate. She volunteered instantly. From the very beginning, it's clear, Katniss's driving force is her family. She'll do anything for them, break rules, take risks, even sacrifice her own life. That's why when Peeta says he doesn't want to lose himself, Katniss can't relate. She doesn't have the luxury of ideals. She has to survive. For Prim. Though she quietly resents the Capitol, like when she and Gale talk about rebellion before the reaping, Katniss isn't thinking about revolution. She's focused only on one thing, keeping her family alive. But that will begin to change. As dawn breaks, Haymitch gives Katniss and Peeta their final instructions. There'll be weapons at the cornucopia, he warns, but going for them is a trap. Run. Find water. Stay alive. Then in the launch tunnels, Cinna gives Katniss her arena outfit. He pins the golden Mockingjay pin to her chest and hugs her. If I could bet, I'd bet on you. Katniss enters the launch tube. When it opens, she sees the arena for the first time, a dense forest surrounding the cornucopia. Countdown begins. The gong sounds. Chaos erupts. Tributes sprint, fight, scream. Katniss grabs a backpack and runs into the woods, barely dodging a knife thrown by Clove. That night, 13 cannon blasts echo in the sky. 13 tributes dead in just 8 hours. Their faces appear in the sky, one by one. Katniss realizes the career tributes, those from Districts 1 and 2, have formed an alliance. And to her shock, Peeta is with them. He's helping them track her. The next day, the game makers manipulate the arena to force Katniss out of hiding. They send a wave of fire through the forest. She escapes, but her leg is badly burned. She limps to a lake, but the careers find her. She climbs a tree for safety. Cato tries to follow, but falls. Peeta suggests they wait her out, so they make camp below her. The next morning, Rue, hiding in another tree, points out a wasp nest. Not just any nest. Tracker jackers, genetically engineered wasps whose venom causes hallucinations and can kill. Katniss cuts the branch. The nest falls. Chaos. Glimmer dies. The others flee. Katniss, stung and disoriented, hears Peeta shouting at her to run. She blacks out. Days later, she wakes. Rue has been caring for her. They form an alliance. Rue tells her the careers have gathered all the food and supplies in one place. Together, they form a plan. Rue will set fires as a distraction. Katniss will destroy the food. As the careers rush off to investigate the smoke, Katniss reaches their supplies. The ground is mined. She fires an arrow, triggering a bag of apples to fall. Sets off the mines. Everything explodes. But when Katniss returns, Rue is gone. She finds her trapped in a net. As she frees her, Marvel appears and hurls a spear. It hits Rue. Katniss kills him instantly. She holds Rue in her arms as she dies. Gently, she sings to her, a song she once sang to Prim. Then she lays flowers around Rue's body. A silent rebellion begins to bloom. Around her, silence. Then Katniss raises 3 fingers in a gesture of respect, directed toward District 11. It's small, quiet, but it's powerful. That single act sparks something in the crowd. Fury, grief, defiance. Without meaning to, Katniss ignites something far stronger than fear. She awakens hope. For Katniss, the real turning point was the death of Rue. Rue reminded her so much of Prim, her gentleness, her vulnerability, her age. Everything about Rue brought Katniss back to the one person she had sworn to protect. And when Rue died, something shifted inside her. For the first time, Katniss felt, in her bones, that no one she loved would ever truly be safe in a system like this. Not even Prim. But Katniss didn't let Rue's death become just another casualty of the games. She gave her a farewell filled with dignity and respect. She treated Rue not like an opponent, but like a human being. That moment shattered the logic of the games. The violence paused. And for a brief moment, humanity resurfaced. That gesture didn't just honor Rue, it resonated far beyond the arena. People were watching, and they felt something shift too. After that, surviving wasn't enough for Katniss. She realized she had to resist, that she couldn't allow the capital to define her. That realization made her dangerous. In a world where everything is a performance, authenticity becomes a threat. That's why Katniss makes the capital so uncomfortable, and why people connect with her so deeply. Even when they force her to play a role, she still lets a glimpse of her true self shine through. Back at the Capitol, Haymitch warns Seneca Crane, if they kill Katniss now, they won't silence her. They'll turn her into a martyr. And that could spark a revolution. So instead, Haymitch proposes something more effective. A love story. 'Cause love, he says, always sells. A new rule is announced. If the last two tributes are from the same district, they can win together. And when Katniss hears it, she thinks of one person, Peeta. She finds him wounded, hidden near the river, camouflaged in mud. She cleans his wound, tends to him, and kisses him gently on the cheek. His leg is in bad shape, but Katniss does everything she can to help. Later, they receive a sponsor gift, a bowl of broth and a note that says, "That's not much of a kiss." Peeta then opens up. He tells Katniss he's always watched her from a distance. He remembers her singing in school. He says he doesn't want to forget a single moment they've shared. Then the game makers announce a feast at the cornucopia. Each tribute will find the one thing they desperately need. For Peeta, that means medicine. But he doesn't want Katniss to risk her life for him. She promises to stay by his side and kisses him more convincingly. But when he falls asleep, she sneaks off. At the cornucopia, Clove attacks her. Just as Clove is about to deliver the final blow, Thresh, Rue's district partner, intervenes. He kills Clove and spares Katniss, saying, "Just this once for Rue." Katniss makes it back with the medicine. Peeta recovers. For the first time, survival feels possible. But the games aren't over. Foxface dies accidentally after eating poison berries Peeta had picked, not knowing they were deadly. Katniss, seeing the berries, decides to keep them, just in case. Then the game makers release their final trap. The Mutts, genetically engineered monsters. Thresh is killed. Katniss and Peeta flee to the top of the cornucopia, where Cato attacks. He grabs Peeta, but Katniss shoots Cato in the hand. Peeta pushes him off, and the Mutts finish the job. Just when it seems the nightmare is over, a final announcement echoes through the arena. The rule change is revoked. There can only be one winner. Katniss and Peeta stare at each other. Peeta offers to die, but Katniss refuses. They won't play the Capitol's game. She pulls out the poison berries. They eat them together, the Capitol gets no victor. Just before they do it, the voice returns, "Stop. They've won. The 74th Hunger Games are over." They return to the Capitol as champions, but President Snow isn't celebrating. He knows what really happened. This was an act of rebellion. Haymitch warns Katniss. She has to keep playing the part. She has to sell the love story. She agrees. In the interviews, she says she couldn't live without Peeta. But Peeta doesn't fake it. He says he truly loves her. And the danger isn't gone. On the train back home, Peeta asks, "So what happens now?" Katniss, staring out the window, says softly, "I guess we try to forget." But Peeta doesn't want to forget. As they arrive in District 12 to a hero's welcome, President Snow watches from a distance. In the end, it wasn't the grand gestures that shook the Capitol's control. It was the small, real ones. Moments of compassion in a world built on fear. Started, perhaps, with Peeta. When they were kids, he burned bread on purpose, knowing his mother would beat him for it, just to feed a starving girl he barely knew. That moment gave Katniss hope. Then it was Katniss, volunteering to take Prim's place. Then Rue. And in a place designed to destroy connection, Rue and Katniss chose to trust and care for each other. Then Thresh. He saved Katniss and chose not to kill her because of Rue. Thresh, one of the strongest tributes, used his power not to crush but to protect. And maybe, just maybe, that helped plant the idea in Katniss that caring for others could be a form of resistance too. Each of these moments, small, quiet acts of kindness, were seeds of rebellion in a system that thrives on fear and selfishness. And they all led to the moment when Katniss and Peeta chose not to kill each other. A choice that proved the Capitol didn't have full control. Despite the capital's efforts to suppress empathy and paint compassion as weakness, it survived. I once read a quote that stuck with me. The Hunger Games taught an entire generation that the most revolutionary thing they could do was be kind. And it's true, because in a world that glorifies violence, teaches you to survive at someone else's expense, and discourages connection, choosing to care, to forgive, to protect, or to share a piece of bread becomes an act of radical defiance. To you who made it all the way to the end, thank you. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. It really helps the channel and makes sure you won't miss any of my future videos. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next one.